Okay, sticking to the subject of church history, we are going to talk about the translation of the Book of Mormon. And so I guess by starting things off, I do want to highlight one work that has been put together by the church, which is actually called, let me pull it up real quick, which is called the Book of Mormon translation. It's on the church website under the Gospel Topic Essays, Book of Mormon translation. I highly recommend for anyone that, like me, finds himself as a church history buff, if you would like to read and explore some more on the church's website, Gospel Topic Essays, read about the Book of Mormon translation. There's a great section on that. With that being said, we're going to the next part of Come Follow Me, which has the question, how was the Book of Mormon translated? So we're going to explore a little bit of that topic today in this video. And so I think the thing I want to make clear first and foremost when answering the question, how is the Book of Mormon translated? What we say is the Book of Mormon was translated by the gift and power of God. That is how it was translated, through Joseph Smith, and by the power and gift of God, the Book of Mormon was translated. Joseph Smith, it's kind of interesting. Joseph Smith never publicly gave any details of the translation process. He would only say that it was done, like I said, by the gift and power of God. At a conference in 1831, Hiram invited the prophet to explain more fully how the Book of Mormon came forth. Joseph Smith responded to Hiram and to the congregation by saying, "It was not intended to tell the world all the particulars of the coming forth of the Book of Mormon, and it was not expedient for him to relate these things." So we learn from the prophet that there are not a lot of details that the Lord wants us to know in regards to translation. By the gift and power of God, it was done. Now, with that being said, we have a lot of information of the translation process because of statements from his scribes, mainly Oliver and Emma. You can also get some information from David Whitmer as well as Martin Harris and other contemporary works. And we learn a lot about people surrounding Joseph at that time, but I think it is important to start off by stating that Joseph Smith made public declarations that it was not expedient for us to know all of the details. But with that being said, we are going to explore some of the details. But if you want to end the video right now, you could probably do that as well in just stating that it was done by the gift and power of God. But I do want to explore some of those subjects with those that might be interested in finding out a little bit more. I want to go over the translation tools. And these were tools, some of them he had previously, and some of them were brought forth through the uncovering of the gold plates. So one of the tools that was given Joseph was the Urim and Thummim. These were found at the hill with the gold plates. These were not something new to Joseph. They had been used throughout the history of God's people. Joseph Smith in 1832 referred to them as spectacles, and by 1835 he was using the word Urim and Thummim and using also interpreters and spectacles. So you get a lot of different words, but it's all referring to the Urim and Thummim, which he used in part of the translation process. Another tool that was used as a part of the translation process was a seer stone, which is a small oval stone that was used to find lost items and treasure. This is actually a tool that Joseph Smith already had in his possession before the translation began. Another tool that was used by the prophet Joseph Smith, which might come as a little bit of an interesting type of thing, was humility. The prophet needed to be humble through this process. I want to read a quick experience that is recorded and recalled by David Whitmer. One morning when Joseph Smith was getting ready to resume translation of the Book of Mormon, something went wrong about the house and he was put out about it. Something that Emma, his wife, had done. Oliver and I went upstairs, this is David Whitmer speaking, and Joseph came up soon after to continue the translation, but he could not do anything. He could not translate a single syllable. He went downstairs out into the orchard and made supplication to the Lord. He was gone about an hour. He came back to the house and asked Emma's forgiveness, and then came upstairs where we were, and then the translation went on all right. He could do nothing save he was humble and faithful. I just like that story as well. Although the means of translating evolved and he had different means of translating, there were moments when Joseph Smith wasn't using the Urim and Thummim or the seer stone and was just relating to the scribe the inspiration that was filling his mind and his heart. Joseph Smith got better at translating as time went on, and he wasn't having to use the physical object as much. Again, we don't know all the details, but what we do know is what the prophet said. It was done by the gift and power of God. Throughout history, there was lots of tools that were used in translating. The rod of Aaron, a brass serpent, holy anointing oils, the Ark of the Covenant. At times, dirt was used as an object of translation. These were used to receive the will of God for many prophets since the beginning of time. Although we do not know the specific dates, there wasn't a clear history taken back in these days. The prophet was actually rebuked a couple of times for not keeping a history. But from everything we can gather, most evidence suggests at this following timeline. So I want to go over the timeline real quick. So first, starting in 1828, April 12th to June 14th, 1828, was the translation of the first 116 pages of manuscript. The main scribe at this time was Martin Harris. Emma Smith, Joseph's wife, was also a big part of the translating process and acting as a scribe. But predominantly, Emma Smith, Martin Harris, his brother, helped out a couple of times as acting as a scribe, but Martin was the main scribe during that time. June 15th to September 22nd, 1828, so we're still in 1828, the translation process is stopped as the 116 pages are lost. September 22nd, 1828 through April 5th, 1829. So this is ranging over about 5 months. There's a few pages that are translated, but Joseph is then commanded by God to stop for a season. I don't know what the reasons are behind that. The 116 pages being lost was definitely a blow to the prophet's morale. It was an experience that he received severe chastisement, Martin Harris as well, and they stopped the translation for a season. Starting April 7th, 1829 through May 31st, 1829, Oliver Cowdery becomes a scribe, and Joseph translate from Mosiah to the end of Moroni. June 1st to June 11th, 1829, Joseph moves to Fayette, New York, and translates the last leaf, or the title page of the Book of Mormon. And then the translation from June 11th to June 31st, 1829, the translation of the last 150 pages, the small plates of Nephi, or First Nephi through the Words of Mormon. So, April 7th to May 31st, we have Mosiah to the end of Moroni. From June 11th to June 31st, Joseph Smith goes back and translates 150 pages, which are First Nephi to Words of Mormon. And then in between that, like I mentioned, the last leaf, the title page, was translated. And so that gives you kind of a rough timeline of the experiences there. Now, quickly, I want to point out some of the things that I found interesting in my research, and I think and I hope that you will too. just kind of in talking about the translation process. I want to go to the day, June 15th, 1828. This I have in my notes marked as a horrible day for the prophet Joseph Smith. On this day, Emma gives birth to their first son, who only lived to be a couple hours. A couple hours old. He died right after being born. They named the son Alvin, and then he was buried that same day. Joseph found out on this same day, June 15th, that Martin Harris lost the 116 pages. And on that day, the angel Moroni took away from Joseph his possession of the plates and the interpreters. So on this day, June 15th, 1828, he lost his firstborn son, he lost the pages that were translated, and he lost the interpreters and the plates. So that day goes down as a horrible day for the prophet Joseph Smith. But I would add to that it was a learning experience for him, a humbling experience. Joseph Smith, in Doctrine and Covenants, we learn that he realized that he feared man more than God. And from that point on, he made a dedicated effort in his personal life to fear God more than man, or to trust God and to follow God more than he did fear men. I think it's interesting, in March 1829, Martin, who felt terrible of the experience, he and his wife actually split up over the experience, comes and asks forgiveness of him. He went through a lot of humbling through that experiences of losing the pages, and in that moment, Doctrine and Covenants section 5 is received, and Martin is promised that if he will commit to being faithful from that point on, that he again will receive his blessing that had been promised. And as we know, that was received by Martin, as he was able to become one of the 3 witnesses of this great and marvelous work. I find it interesting, on May 15th, 1829, Oliver and Joseph are translating the Book of Mormon, and they stumble upon 3rd Nephi. So they're in 3rd Nephi translating, and they look at each other. Well, I don't know. I'm just kind of imagining it in my mind how it happened. They're translating about the authority of baptism and Jesus Christ talking to his saints in the land of Bountiful, and they look at each other and they go, should we be baptized? Should we do something about this? And that led to the experience when they go out and they pray on the banks of the Susquehanna River, when John the Baptist appears to them, restores the authority to baptize, and then Martin, and Oliver and Joseph then baptize one another. I just think it's such a cool experience, because here they are translating this work, and the Lord is revealing to them steps of the restoration. But it didn't come until Oliver and Joseph asked for that. The last experience I'm going to share, this is from one of the contemporaries, but I think it's a pretty cool story that I just learned about, and so I want to share it with you. So the last 150 pages that were translated, 1st Nephi to the Words of Mormon, so from the small plates of Nephi, during this translation process, they actually moved from where they were translating to the Peter Whitmer farm in Fayette, New York. The main scribe is still Oliver Cowdery. Some of the Whitmer boys were able to assist from time to time with some of the scribe work, but this became a big burden on the Whitmer family. Visitors were coming and going. Translation was happening around the clock. They were having to feed all of the people that were working on this, and Mother Whitmer was not too happy about all of this. As you could imagine, she was probably having to keep up with a lot of the housework and all the different things that were happening as they were focused on the translation. And this became a burden to her and their family. One day she was out walking, and She went to the barn to milk the cows, and it was at that moment that a stranger came up to her. He had a knapsack, and he looked as if he was a man that lived around the time of that time. She didn't recount that he looked any different than any man. She referred to him as a stranger. He came with a knapsack and sat down with her, and there he pulled out the gold plates. And he showed them to her, and he flipped them over to show her what was happening. And then he said to her, so I'm just going to read it. This strange person turned the leaves of the book of plates over, leaf after leaf, and he showed the engravings upon. After which he told her to be patient and faithful in bearing her burden a little longer, promising that if she would do so, she should be blessed, and her reward would be sure, if she proved faithful to the end. At that point, the personages that was with her, which we have later learned that is the angel Moroni, vanished. He vanished from her sight. And it was at that moment that she had no more problems with what was happening. That was a witness for her to learn that this work was true that they were doing. I want to share my testimony that I know that the Book of Mormon was translated by the gift and power of God. I am so grateful for that witness that I have. The Book of Mormon, so much good in my life has come from the Book of Mormon. And I know that this book, the Book of Mormon, is a book of Scripture. And that we will get closer to God by reading from the pages of this book than any other book on this earth. And I'm so excited to study the Book of Mormon. On Monday, we open up to 1 Nephi chapter 1. I'm looking forward to reading the Book of Mormon with all of you. And I just want to share my witness that I know the Book of Mormon is true.